L'chaim, to life, to everybody. L'chaim, l'chaim. How do you stay above the fray? How do you manage that all of the darkness in the world, there's a lot of it, there's a lot of light, there's a lot of good stuff, there's a lot of darkness. How do we manage that we stay above it all, that it doesn't allow us to drain us emotionally, psychologically, spiritually? All the darkness is out there. Now, of course, if you're inside, learning, doing, and you're not out there, then you won't be tempted. Got a call yesterday from a Jewish mother that, her son is the forces of negativity and seeking some help in how to bring back her son. It's a challenge, no doubt. Welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie, coming to you from Chabad Zich in Kadesh, Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We continue in chapter 46 that speaks about a reciprocal love, where God takes out the Jewish people from a dunghill, from Egypt, from a depraved place, when the king comes with all of his retinue and he puts aside everybody. It comes to this individuals in rags, living literally on a dunghill, and doesn't send a messenger, but himself comes, takes the individual out and brings him into the palace and into the inner chamber, where he has a very close, loving relationship. That's what God did to the Jewish people. We were in Egypt. He didn't send an angel to take us out. He himself took us out, outstretched arm, and he brought us into his inner chamber. Inner chamber, we spoke yesterday about a kiss and an embrace. And that's what a mitzvah is. A mitzvah is God's embrace. Learning Torah is God's kiss. And a kiss, because right now I'm saying the words of Torah, so I'm mouthing, right, with my lips, his words and his words. So that's the divine kiss. And at the same time, there's also the exchange of breath in a kiss. So God's breath, meaning his wisdom, right, is being breathed into me, meaning becoming a part of me. So when we learn Torah, his wisdom, his vision becomes my wisdom and my vision. I see the world the way he sees the world. That's what Torah, that's what he does. He doesn't give it to anybody else. He didn't give the Torah to angels. I mean, they complained about that. He gave it to us. And he wants that relationship with us through Torah mitzvahs. And that's the idea of Asher Kidishanu, that he has sanctified us in a union. Continues today the Alter Rebbe says, this is what King Solomon in the Song of Songs, that he speaks about a bride and a groom. Why? Because it's a perfect metaphor for the Jewish people and God. God's the groom, we're the bride. And there's a union, a unity, and a love and a loving unity with God through a kiss and an embrace. But this is also, now continuing, that Asher Kidishana b'mitzvosav, that he's, right, sanctified us in his commandment, means not just a union like bride and groom, right? But the word Kidishano means separated. He's elevated us to supreme holiness. Kedusha, meaning that idea of separate, apart from the world. beyond the world, beyond the world, having a quality, the quality of encompassing the world, because it doesn't enclose itself within the world. That's what we attain in holiness and being elevated by doing God's mitzvah. And this means, and you shall be holy unto me, for I am the Lord your God. Last week's Torah portion. Need some kiddushin. You should be holy because I am holy. Meaning, we become like God. That the human condition doesn't condition us. The human condition doesn't dictate to us. It doesn't control us. Because as God is not affected, right? His encompassing light is not affected by creation. He's beyond creation. God encloses himself within creation, but he's also at the same time encompassing all of the creation, beyond creation, not affected by creation. Likewise, he separates us so we have that quality too, right? That we are beyond creation and not affected by it. And that's what it means when you betroth a woman also, by the way. When you betroth a woman, what happens?
You take her for yourself. It's like
you are for her and she's for you and no one else. Meaning you're separated for each other and you have no one else. Right? That's the idea of betrothal, right? And this is the idea also then, just as, one spouse, she's yours and you're hers, right? Likewise, God, he's mine. And that's what we say in the Amidah. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu. Say Elokeinu. It's our God. How could you say about God, he's our God? We're his. I mean, he's ours. Well, just like in betrothal, right? I become hers, she becomes mine, separated and no one else, right? It's the same thing over here through the fulfillment of a mitzvah. When we do a mitzvah, studying Torah right now, we become identified so much that God is mine. Of course, I'm his, but but he's mine. In other words, that union, that oneness. And then we say in the Amidah, after Elokeinu, Elokei Avosenu, the God of our patriarchs, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Why do we say the God of Abraham? I mean, the God of Abraham. God is God. He's not, doesn't belong to anybody. No. God gives us the power that through the mitzvah, that we are like him, that we are beyond creation, not affected by creation, separated from creation. And so much so that we identify with him, that he becomes our God. Specifically, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why? Because their whole lives, they were completely absorbed in the light of God, that there was no other reality for them but their connection to God, their union and oneness with God. Right? And therefore they were called what's called a merkava, a chariot to God, because they had no whim, no desire of their own, only being a reflection of the divine. That's all they were, and that's all they sought out. Now, we have that also. Every Jew has that every time you do a mitzvah. In the act of doing the mitzvah, you're occupying God's commandments, right? In that moment, you are completely identified, absorbed, and elevated, separated from this world and having a union with God, and in a manner that this world can't affect you. Parenthetically, it doesn't say this over here, but interesting that right, King David knew that he was going to die on Shabbos. What did he do a whole Shabbos? He learned a whole Shabbos. He didn't sleep. He learned all Shabbos. Because in the middle of learning, he's not going to be able to die when you're doing a mitzvah. So what happened? There was a rustle in the bushes. He took his attention away, and that's when the angel of death was able to take him. Because in the moment of doing the mitzvah, he's elevated, he's separated, he's beyond. Even the angel of death doesn't have the capability, right? But if you take away your attention from your learning, then you're not learning it in that, it might be a brief moment, but in that brief moment, you're not learning. So therefore, you're not elevated. You're not separated. You're then being able to be affected by creation, right? That's parenthetically, by the way. The Alter Rebbe didn't say this here.
Specific to Torah learning, what you just said, it's not for any mitzvah. It's Torah learning, the angel of death cannot interfere.
Yeah.
Yeah, only for Torah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, for this reason, our sages say that even when someone is a boor, an uncouth individual, but they're doing a mitzvah, the mitzvah bikurim, it's specifically bringing the first fruits, right? They're in the midst of doing the mitzvah, you have to stand up for them. Because they're now an elevated individual. They're separated and united in one with God, right? So much so that became my God, right? And he is my God, even in such an individual, because God dwells in that soul at that moment. You don't feel it? Well, feelings are not reality. Feelings is just what I feel, right? Feelings is just what I feel. It's because we're not refined enough, so therefore we don't experience the fact that God is dwelling in me right now in doing the mitzvah of learning Torah. But the fact is who did experience it? The patriarchs. That's why they call it the God of Abraham, right? And of course, the righteous, the righteous, and so on. They experience that. That's what's called Elam Chatir B'chayecha, that you should see your world in your life. See your world. What's your world? Well, the world is God, right? So that you should experience in your life your connection. And here we're talking about a connection not within the world, but beyond the world, right? That we're separated, we're united in one. So how do you stay above the riffraff? How do you stay above the darkness of this world? Do a mitzvah. Because in the moment of doing the mitzvah, in particular learning Torah, we are identified and bound up with God in such a manner that all the darkness of the world doesn't affect us. Now, of course, we got to continuously do it, and that's what the patriarchs were. But in that manner, we are above it all.
But don't we affect the world by doing this work and learning Torah?
Absolutely. That's not the angle over here. It's not negating that fact, right? Here, the angle over here is, remember, what's the metaphor? God took the Jewish people out of the dunghill and brought us. Not only he himself did it, could have done that. And that's it. No, he brought us into an inner chamber. And there he gives us a kiss and a hug. And here, metaphor going further, that God is giving us the opportunity through a mitzvah that we can be separated from the darkness of the world, from the limitations of this world, and be sanctified, meaning being elevated and exalted beyond the human condition and having a union with God in such a way that God dwells in me. Right? That's, so the point here is not about the word, that our reference point, what you're saying is correct. We learned that in, chapters 35, 36, 37, right, we learned that point about, affecting the world, right? But here the point is what the king is doing for me. Why? Because what we're going to eventually come to is that if this is being done for you, shouldn't you want to reciprocate? If he's showing you so much devotion and so much love, don't you want to reciprocate? Right? That's the idea over here, the reciprocal love, right? That the simpleton who lived on a dunghill, who was taken out by the king and shown so much attention, so much love and devotion, of course you would reciprocate to that individual, right? To that king. So that's what we're talking about. That's the reference point. Okay. All right, folks. We're going to continue our conversation, but not now.
Sure.
Okay, we'll continue our Verbringen, but not now. There's not, well, okay, Rambam's coming up immediately for a few moments.